Well, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're calling in. It's Karl Krebs. I'm one of the brand partners in our Lifewave Success Live Younger group. And this is our mid-month training call, a time that we like to devote to helping to equip our brand partners in the group. Tonight's topic is going to be on retention. What does that mean? To retain, to keep. And as important as it is to bring people into our wonderful Lifewave community, is equally as important to ensure that we find and use every way to retain them, so that we don't have a flow of people coming in at one end and leaving at the equal rate at the other end. We have a zero net effect game. So retention is a big part of every business. It's certainly a big part of what we do at Lifewave. And tonight's guest speaker is Judy Friesen, one of our directors and brand partners in the group. And she's put together a brief presentation. We're going to let her do that. I'm going to add a few more comments after that. And after the recording, we'll open it up for Q&A. So Judy Friesen, all the way from beautiful Abbotsford, BC. The floor is yours.
All right. Thanks, Karl. And again, welcome to everybody here on the call tonight. And those of you who may be listening to the recording a little bit later. I have been thinking for quite some time that we need to have some kind of talk or encouragement or even incentive around the idea of retaining our customers. We get a lot of incentives from Lifewave on bringing in new people and advancing a rank, for example, but we don't really hear a lot of talk about retaining them. We all kind of know that good customer service is kind of important. And, you know, when you go to the store and you buy a new pair of pants, for example, or a new dress or something, you know, if the clerk has been kind to you and they've treated you with respect and they've shown an interest in you and they haven't tried to just force you into buying more than you want, all those things, people will actually remember that. And they've done studies and they tend to go back to those places. Even if the item that you're buying might be a little bit more expensive, because they really want a good relationship experience between the customer and the clerk. Well, in Lifewave, you know, we've talked quite a bit this last year and this year also about heart to heart and caring about each other. And so I was talking to Karl and said, you know, one of the things that I really would like to talk more about is some of my experience I've had over some 30 years of running home businesses and also working in the not-for-profit charitable world when I worked with a lot of donors, is how do you retain those people rather than just burning through them. And like Karl said, you have more people leaving at the same time as you're bringing them in and your net effect is zero. You're not really growing your business if you're losing a lot. Now, in the industry, we often hear that it's very normal to kind of lose 30-40% of your customers. So if you bring in preferred customers or brand partners, I don't want to say that's acceptable. I don't think we want to have all of our good efforts end up that people walk away after 6 months or a year, after you've done all that time of working with them and training them and helping them. So what should we be doing to make sure that people don't walk away? Now, sometimes you can't help it. Either they are seniors and they either are getting so sick they go into hospice or hospital or something. Maybe there are people who just simply have really challenging times like bankruptcy. But I'm talking about those people who literally walk away and you don't really know why. They may tell you a story like, well, the patches aren't really working for me, but really, why are they walking away? If you had a good relationship with them, they probably wouldn't walk away. They'd probably stick with you, ask you to help them or whatever. I had an interesting situation that happened here today, and I'm going to bring up some PowerPoint presentation in just a minute. But before I get there, one of the things that happened to me today is that I was doing my good retention techniques, which is making sure that I talk to my customers or my brand partners regularly, even if it's just a check-in to say, hey, how's it going? So I talked to this lady And she apologized for not calling me back. And it was odd that she hadn't called me, and I was waiting and waiting. And it had been like a month and a half. And normally I talk to people at least every month. And so she said to me something very valuable that I thought I'd pass on tonight. She said, the reason why I didn't call you back is I felt so uncomfortable or guilty to call you back, because I know you're going to ask me, how is it going with the patches? And I don't have any good news to report. I don't seem to see much progress except in one area. And I just felt like I just can't call Judy and I'm going to disappoint her by telling her the bad news. Well, that sent a huge light bulb on in my mind. And that is, you never know what's stopping people from communicating with you. It could be that their life is busy. It could be that they're depressed. It could be that their dog died, whatever. But in this case, this lady was just feeling guilty for giving me not a raging review of what's been happening. And so I learned something. When I go and I ask someone, hey, I'd love to talk with you, it's time for a little checkup. I tell people we're going to have a checkup or a check-in every 2 weeks or every month, depending on where they're at. I need to say, and no matter what you're experiencing, good, bad, or ugly, let's talk. I don't mind. So I want to give people the comfort to know that it's okay. And these are the kind of things that can make it or break it with why someone might walk away. And here it was because she just felt uncomfortable or guilty in giving me some bad news, what she thought was bad news. Well, it ended up that I was able to discuss with her why she wasn't getting the results she was getting. I gave her some suggestions. And before you knew it, at the end of the call, she not only didn't walk away and quit, but she ordered $200 worth, and she's coming on Saturday to pick it up. So it's really a technique of anticipating what your people are struggling with. And some people are shyer than the rest of us, and they just find it hard to call you back because they know they're going to say something negative, and they don't want to be pressured. And I just made sure I didn't pressure her. I just said, I think that we need to try this or try that. If you're interested in trying it, then I have some patches here for you. Well, let's go to this very short and quick 5 slides that I've got for you. And I can't take any credit for these slides. I'm going to share some more thoughts from my own experience of being in the donor world and then being in multi-level marketing. But this slide presentation is actually from our good friend and upline, Connie Lucas, who's a senior, I think now she's a senior presidential director. And so she has put some thought into customer retention. Connie is a lady who's actually a hairdresser. And so she knows what it's like your income is based on how well you did the last time you did a haircut or a wash with somebody. So you need to learn how to encourage people and how to help them. And so Connie brings a lot of experience, both in Lifewave as well as previous in her hairdressing salon. Okay, next slide. So she calls this issue that we're talking about churn in your business. And I love that word, churn. When you think about churning butter, you go around and around and around, and sometimes all the stuff just leaks out and you lose all these people and you don't know why they're walking away. So she said that the retention challenges are what Karl and I have already talked about, that there's no momentum or that they are leaving as fast as they're coming in, and you don't want that. That's discouraging. And so the number one point that I'd like to make here is, if you're taking notes, is to help retention is, first of all, to look at your names and your numbers. Absolutely know who you sponsored and how many people are no longer ordering. And you can do that in your back office by looking at your recent activity list or who's ordered lately. So that's really important to at least watch your numbers. Next slide. The other thing is that there's 3 keys to keeping them in the family or in your downline. And one is to help them set reasonable expectations for what they think they should be getting from these patches and how their body works. So I do a lot of education with all of my people to make sure that they keep their expectations reasonable. And I help them, I ask them, let's set a goal. If your desire is to improve your arthritis, and you know you've had your arthritis for 5 or 10 years, then what would be a reasonable goal? Would it be to get rid of all of your arthritis pain in 3 months? No, probably not. So I help them to set reasonable expectations for their health plan. And then we set the goal that we will be talking. I get them to commit that we will talk and discuss how they're feeling. Are they getting worse? Are they getting better? Is it staying the same? And then I can ask them questions about their drinking their water and their diet and their stress in their life, and work through all of their goal setting and getting their expectations so that it's reasonable, so that they don't give up. So I said to you that is so important. You have to go back. Education, helping to educate them on how the body works. There's lots of information out there about how the body detoxes and about how many months it takes before you achieve detox, and how long you've been sick and experiencing the problem will help you to set reasonable expectations. And then connecting them, having people come to calls like this, making them feel like they're part of a community, introducing them to some other people so that you're not the only expert in their life. Helping them to talk with each other is a really good thing to do. Next slide. The other thing is, when we were talking about setting the reasonable expectations, is you always want to ask them the questions. What's important to them? You may think that they need to deal with their heart disease first, but they're always talking about their migraines. Well, you got to listen and know if they really want to work on the migraines first and not their heart disease, well, then that's their prerogative. So we want to really stress and help them to realize that the X39 patch, if given enough time, really will do a lot for them. And you want to help them to not only articulate what do they want to improve, but also what would they like to change, and what are they willing to do to help make those changes. InTouch app is also a good app to help you to remember, when did I last talk to them, or is it time for me to call them again? So that is important, that you have a system so you can remind yourself of when you need to call them back. The second one we talked about a little bit already, which is education. You don't want to give them a whole lot of stuff that they're not interested in if that's not their thing. So you want to find out what does interest them. Some people say, I hate watching long videos. So then I don't try to send them any videos. I send them a one-page document on something or other. But you want to make sure that they do understand the technology, the basics of phototherapy. Giving them a health tracker, that health tracker is really worth its weight in gold. If you haven't used it, I would highly recommend it, even for yourself. Keep track for 90 days of some of the changes in your health. Even if you've been on the patches for a year or two, there's always going to be some changes. And it's great to remind people that, you know what, when I call up someone and I say, how are you doing? And have you noticed any changes recently? They'll say, nope, nothing's happened. These patches aren't working. And then I remember when I first met them, they told me about a whole bunch of big health problems. And then they told me about some smaller ones. And it's funny how when you ask them, yes, but I remember you told me that you had pain in your big toe. And then I say to them, has not even that hasn't even responded? Has that changed at all? I know that your arthritis hasn't changed and maybe your migraines haven't changed, but what about the pain in your big toe? And guess what? Almost every time the person says, oh, Judy, you're right. I forgot all about that. Yes, the pain in my big toe is gone. I kind of had ignored that because I was thinking about my migraines and my arthritis. So it's really been helpful for me to keep a file on everybody and what they say are all their health problems, because when I call them to try to prove to them that these patches are doing their job, they sometimes minimize their improvements because they've forgotten about a lot of the little things. It wasn't even more than a couple of months ago that one of my own brand partners and I were talking, and they were talking about how they found that a problem with their grinding of their teeth had improved. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that I used to have jaw pain. I used to go to a physiotherapist and she used to have to release all this tension right here in this area. And all of a sudden I realized for now 3 years, I haven't had that pain. You see, I hadn't even written it down. So I couldn't give the patches the credit that the credit was due because I hadn't been meticulous enough to write down everything. So that health tracker is really, really important. But keep sending them little bits and dribs and drabs, maybe an interesting article, maybe a great testimony that you saw somewhere. Maybe it's a little short video, whatever it is, find out what they like the best, and then keep sending them a little bit here to keep them educated. Next slide, please. The last one is the connection in the community. Make it all about them. What is their interest? And write it down, because you're not going to remember. If you get 10, 20, 30 brand partners, you're not going to remember who is liking what. So write it down and then go back. And I cycle back every calendar, every month on my calendar. I put in the people that I should be calling, the people that I should be texting, or the people that I need to be putting out some kind of an encouragement to them, or some kind of a story, or, you know, how are you really doing apart from the patches, to show care and interest in them so they feel connected. It builds trust, and it helps them to know that you really do care. It's not just about sales, that you really care about them as a person. And of course, having a little bit of fun and laughter goes a long way as well. But give value and you will never be selling. I like that quote from Connie. If you give value, then people will not at all think that all you're doing is trying to make a sale. They know that you really do care about them. So last is, I want to just add a couple more thoughts to this presentation because we are done that part. So Carola, thank you for advancing the slides, and you can just take that off now. Couple last little quick things here. I know time is running out. I got one more minute. Is the other things that I do to kind of help people to feel connected so that they won't give up, or that we retain them in the organization, is to help them to know that there's a way that they can actually make some money so that they won't be complaining that they can't afford it. And so I show them ways that they can do it. For some people, they say, I cannot do this. And I say, well, if you can tell somebody about a good restaurant you like, you can just say to them, hey, there's these really neat health patches. And I actually give them a sentence or a couple sentences they can say, and then they can just introduce me to them, and then I can take it from there. So I really find that it really helps to help people to know if they're saying that the patches are too much of an expense for them. I show them different ways that they can actually grow a business, or at least send referrals, and then I can help them to grow. But it's important that when you have these regular check-ins, that you really do keep notes, and then you talk about the next time you're going to talk to them. So there's never a better time to set the next appointment than the appointment that you're in. So if you're talking to someone tomorrow and you've done your check-in and they know that you care and you're making sure that everything's working and they're using the right protocols, make sure you say, okay, well, it's been wonderful to chat with you. How about we look at our calendars, and what time in February would work for you, just to do, even if it's just 10 minutes, just to see if you're doing okay. Some of my brand partners, I've even helped them to say that let's just put it in our calendars. And Lori is an example. Lori and I realized that we could learn from each other, and we could help her and help her along the way. And so I just said, hey, why don't we do this monthly? So we have a monthly call that comes up in our calendar, so that if we talk in between, that's great, but at least we know for sure we're set that time aside to talk with each other for half an hour, or whatever is needed. And I think that it's been really helpful. Don't forget birthdays or anniversaries. I even try to look at when a person signed up, and if it's been a year or if it's been 2 years, then I'll call them or I'll send them a text and I'll say, hey, you've been in Lifewave now for a year. It's your 1-year anniversary. Congratulations. So you can find creative ways, whether it's a birthday or whether it's an anniversary or whatever. Try to find a way to celebrate that person, to acknowledge that they are, working hard at their little business. If you're helping them to grow their own business, then you got to make it a priority to be there for them morning, noon, or night. But you also want to not spoon feed them. You want to show them how to find the stuff that they need to grow, So if Lori calls me and says, Judy, I don't understand the comp plan, I might give her a few tips, but I'll also say, hey, Lori, why don't you go and listen to the comp plan video in your back office and then let's talk. You see, that way she's not like a baby, you know, stuck to me like the umbilical cord. I've taught her how to help herself. Or someone will say, where's a video on helping someone with memory problems? Well, I could send it to them, but I can also say, go to YouTube and type it in and you will find some. And then if you need help or you want to discuss which one is good, then call me. So I'm also a bad one for that. I tend to give people everything, but I'm learning as I grow, I need to back off and say, here's how I'm going to teach you how to fish. I'm not going to do the fishing for you. And that's just really, really important. So that with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karl. We can have a little bit more discussion here, but I think that we want to open up the phone lines. And just before Karl gives his last comments, do any of you have any feedback or any ideas of what you can help all of us with? What's a good way that you've learned how to retain your customers rather than losing them? You can unmute the lines, Carola, and anybody that wants to speak up, just raise your hand and I'll call on you. If you've got an idea of what do you do to make sure that you retain people in your organization? Lori, do you have your mute off? Are you thinking you wanted to say something? No? Okay, that's fine. Anybody else?
Hey, Judy, just one, it's Cameron, just one simple thing that I do that is very effective is I always put notes in my calendar for a follow-up call, and I'll put a little sub note as to why I'm following up with that person. I'm not able to rely on my memory, and so that works really well for me.
Excellent. Thank you for that. That's exactly what I do. I have names all over my calendar, and sometimes it's just a check-in. I'll write that in my calendar, but if it's because they need some information about glutathione, I'll write that down so that I don't have to look stupid when I call them and I ask them to tell me, why am I calling you? I'm supposed to call you, but I don't know why. So yes, making a few extra notes because we can't rely on our memories solely. Thank you for that. That's a good thought. Anybody else? Carola?
It reminded me again, like I had watched something else December 1st, but then this just reminded me spoon feeding people is not really good, you know, like I'm guilty of that too, and I need to back off too. So, I mean, yes, you can, like you're saying, help people, but help them to find it, you know, and the way you were explaining it, it's good. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. I did forget to say that there is this thing called the pay portal where people have to set up to get their pay out of their back office. And that can be a nightmare setting that thing up because you've got to take screenshots and upload, and people don't know how to upload and they don't know how to answer the questions. And so I have done a lot of hours in walking people through and hand holding them to set up that pay portal. Why do I do that when I really should be saying to them, it's your problem, call the pay portal people, they'll show you. The reason why I'm helping them is because if my customers, if my brand partners aren't getting paid, then they're going to lose interest. Once they start seeing money coming into their account, that also helps to retain them because now they're starting to say, wait a minute, I'm getting money back so I can pay and afford my own patches. So I really am motivated to get that pay portal set up with them and for them. So that's just a little aside. All right. I know we're running out of time and I don't want Karl to be mad at me because I've taken up all of his time. So I'm gonna
Judy, I could never be mad at you, and if I was, it wouldn't last very long. You're far too precious to our group. Thank you so much. I know the rest of you are silently applauding what I think is a very professional and thorough presentation on this valuable topic. I was making some notes and I thought, okay, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to talk, but you picked it all up like a Hoover vacuum and you got all of it. But I do want to add something here. I think it's important from the inception, from the beginning, that retention starts from the very beginning, and how we welcome people into the group is a really important thing. And I've been stressing to brand partners in this group that I've been directly working with is to welcome them yourself as the sponsor, and if possible, a little bio about who they are or what they do, something to endear them and to make them known to the group a little bit more. For example, BJ signed up a person, he's not on the call right now, but I believe it was Martin, right? Is that right, BJ? Martin?
Yeah.
John Martins.
John
Martins. And John is a really good massage therapist and does a little bit more than that. So there's an opportunity to promote him and let people know what his background is. So he's kind of known to the community. And then beyond that, so you welcome him into our chat, for example, make sure he joins our Facebook group. But more importantly, Robin and Gregory, who are our upline in Live Younger, have laid out some very specific, and they call it 1, 2, 3 basics, and it's in liveyoungersuccess.com. And if there's any website in our total vast array of websites you need to get acquainted with that has incredible resources, that is one of them. And the basics of 1, 2, 3 is there are welcome letters set up there for both brand partners and preferred customers, which you can simply copy and paste and then personalize it. Make sure they know that this is coming from you. And in that letter, you give them their ID number, you give them their username and their password, should they ever forget it, perhaps. You give them the steps that they can do themselves to get started in our Lifewave community, such as downloading the mobile app, registering in the Live Younger for the webinars and the Zoom calls that happen on a regular basis. Plug them in. Make sure they know that they're part of a large community that has deep connections to each other. And when they start to see how vast our organization is, but yet how personal we are on the local level, those are definitely connecting points. And we want to establish as many of those connecting points as we can. So important to bring them in the group properly by sending them the welcome letter. Judy already mentioned anniversaries, very important, but I think this whole thing revolves around heart to heart. And we have got to make an effort to get to know who our people are. And when we think of things that might interest them, I think it's important to send them off to them, a little memo about something. Find points to engage them, because as Judy and I have talked, it's not just about making the call, it's having a purpose in the call. And it's very important that when we think of them and think of something that might interest them, another good reason to call them. And then, by the way, how are things going with the patches? Nobody wants to be pestered, and I certainly don't. If I'm doing something and waiting for results, that's fine. But if there's a purpose in that call, make it a good purpose, find those connecting points. And one other thing I want to share, and I'm making this effort in our local group, find places where people can plug in and be a part of the group. I'm asking certain people in our group that are within our reach for the different events that we're holding in Manitoba to volunteer. And I'm asking them to volunteer. They're not necessarily coming to me, but I'm saying, you know, I think you'd be really good at this. Would you mind taking a role here and perhaps arranging for a facility that we can hold an event at, or assign them to an area where you ask them to populate the Facebook page that we have with good articles, or the chat with good articles. The more information we have that flows out of us to our sponsors, those are all connecting points. And we have so much information out there that it just gives us no excuse not to find a reason to reach out, both within the group and directly to people. So on that note, Judy, 2 minutes, 1 minute to wrap it up in terms of the overall customer retention, and then we'll bring this call to a close and end the recording. And please stay around for some further discussions. Judy, wrap it up for us.
Thanks so much, Karl. Yeah, I loved what you had to say, is that know the purpose of why you're calling, and sometimes on purpose lead with something that you know about them, like somebody who says, you know, I really like, you know, oil painting. then, you know, call them up and say, hey, I saw this beautiful oil painting the other day in a store and I thought of you, and do you know this painter's name? And just have that kind of connection. And then later on, as you said, Karl, bring in the question, hey, how's it going with the patches? What I would like to leave with all of us is a little challenge. You've heard a whole bunch of ideas that we've poured out here tonight. Maybe pick one and ask yourself, the next month or two, I want to implement this one thing that I haven't been doing. So maybe you haven't been celebrating the person's anniversary in Lifewave, their 1 year or their 2 year or their 5 year. Maybe you haven't been doing a regular check-in with them, and they don't know that you want to do that. Maybe they'd be happy to have a 10-minute or a 15-minute check-in. What have you heard tonight that you want to say to yourself, I'm going to implement this when I haven't been doing this as good as I could have been doing? Maybe it's just a thank you. Have you ever thought about just saying, I don't even know if I've thanked my brand partner lately for being in business with me, you know, or a preferred customer, just to say thank you that you've been regularly buying these products. And I come out and I say to people, thank you for your order. Thank you for being a part of this. But yeah, find one thing from tonight and see if you can implement that into your regular routine. And don't give up, even if you forget. Just keep on plugging away and notice your numbers and just see if your retention starts to improve because you are actually showing specifically how much you care about them as a whole person, their mind, their body, their spiritual side, and their physical and health side.